Welcome to the California Maverick, a channel fighting for a free and sane California. Okay, so Prop 50 passed. Gavin Newsom's corrupt, rushed power grab, dressed up as defending democracy and stopping evil fascism from corrupting California, went through. The messaging worked, sort of. A lot of people are doom and gloom right now, and trust me, I understand. I was actually there too. But if I remain nihilistic and keep a negative outlook, I will lose motivation to make these videos. And I made a promise to keep fighting and to keep making videos, and I'm gonna do just that. So I'm going to be taking a glass half full approach. I'm going to take a positive outlook, more or less, because looking at the voter counts for Prop 50's victory, there's actually a pretty massive silver lining. We got a lot to get into. All right, so Prop 50 passed on November 4th, and the turnout was abysmal. It was pathetic on both sides. Let me explain. California has 23 million registered voters, 11 million Democrats, 6 million Republicans, and 5.7 million split up between no party preference, American Independent, and others like Freedom and Peace and Green Party. But here's the kicker. Out of the 23 million registered voters, only 7 million people voted on Prop 50. That's it. Less than half of Democrats bothered to vote. And in a few of my videos covering Prop 50, I mentioned this. They were banking on low turnout. They were banking that this was rushed. They were hoping it was low turnout because they knew they were going to win. But if you look at early polling, it showed that even Democrat voters in San Francisco and the Bay Area vote blue no matter who, liberal, woke, leftist, San Francisco Bay Area. They were uncomfortable with politicians drawing the maps. They didn't like it. They thought it was corrupt. And even though they hated Trump and he was a fascist and it was in the first round of No Kings protests, they still disagreed with stopping or ending the Independent Redistricting Commission. So what I think happened is a bunch of them decided, we're not going to partake and let the chips fall where they may. They just stayed home.
Let's start with this, looking ahead to the ripple effect of the new map on the midterms and some of the ethical questions that Julie brought up last night. We're going to dovetail off what she said. It raised for some potential candidates.
All right, so Gary, Julie, thank you both for being with us here tonight. I want to start with you, though, Julie, because this really had me even scratching my head to think about this when you brought it up last night, because now there are concerns with the Democratic leaders in the State House running for the new congressional districts they actually helped push through. Obviously there, it sounds like an ethical issue.
Yeah, now to be clear, nobody has officially announced yet. It's still sort of people expected to be running. But let me explain this a little bit. So lawmakers approved the map that we all voted on yesterday, right? That's how it got to the ballot. And it's generally the Senate and Assembly leaders who convinced the majority to pass something in that building. Now, while Speaker Rivas on the Assembly side, his district really didn't change much with this redraw. The Senate Pro Tem Mike McGuire's district did dramatically change. I want you to take a look at this district. Now, in addition to the entire top of the state, it now scoops all the way down the very blue coast, including wine country, Marin, all the way down to about San Francisco. Now, before Prop 50, McGuire had been fundraising to run for insurance commissioner. Now he is widely expected to run for this new congressional district. Last night, we asked political consultant, the guy behind the maps, if he could address this perceived conflict of interest. At least that's what some critics are saying. Now, of course, voters clearly said they do not want politicians drawing their own lines back when we created that independent redistricting commission. And to be clear, members of the commission are not allowed to run for any office for 10 years because, keep in mind, they draw lines for all the offices. Ultimately, though, it's going to be up to voters, right, to decide if they want to elect somebody who ran for an office that they had a hand in creating. It's really going to have to be sort of a wait and see.
Voters, but what is not up to voters is the fact that the politicians are choosing their voters in this process. That cannot be denied. That is the bottom line, so Gary. So what is your take on all of this?
Can we just cut to the chase on this? Okay, let's just be real about this, friends. None other than Willie Brown, the most famous political operative and political leader in California in the last half century, told me on air one time very clearly, Gary, the most important thing we do in the Capitol is draw our own districts. If anybody thinks that anybody in that Capitol, who, by the way, all those legislators, the state legislators, had to vote on these maps to put them on the ballot, anybody that thinks that they weren't aware of exactly what districts, of course they were, because they saw the maps beforehand. what district's going to be proposed and what they were voting on and whether they wanted to run in those. If you think that didn't happen, well, we got lots of bridges we can say are nearby here in Sacramento.
Hey, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. It helps me out a lot and I will greatly appreciate it. Now on to the video. So as far as California is concerned, I don't think it was that big of a win. Maybe for political power, sure. But as far as voter enthusiasm and the midterms and all these other things, I think it was very pathetic and there was zero enthusiasm behind it. But here's where the silver lining gets a little bit depressing. This is where it's really frustrating. The no votes were under 3 million. If even 55 to 60% of Republicans voted, Prop 50 would have been easily defeated. This is the problem when you sit here and you say, it's stolen, what does it matter? If 90% of Republicans voted, it wouldn't have even been close. It would have been a 2 million voter difference. That's too big to rig. Surprise, 2 million votes came in last minute, late at night. There's just no way. And this is the problem with the Republican Party and even moderates and independents. People complain, they rant, they go on social media and comment and like videos and post. They threaten to leave the state, some actually do. But when the rubber meets the road, when it's time to put up or shut up, it's time to put your money where your mouth is, no one shows up. This is why the California GOP is on life support. This is why it's comatose. But let's go back to being a little bit more positive, shall we? A poll was conducted the day after the Prop 50 election, and they're interesting to say the least. And the silver lining becomes very, very clear. Both yes and no voters were asked these questions. 54% said Newsom should not run for president. 68% said they didn't want Kamala Harris to run for president. That's two of the top Democrats the last 10 to 15 years in California, by the way. Here's where it gets really interesting. 80% of voters said crime is a problem. 62% said the economy is negative. 84% said the cost of living is unaffordable. And are you ready for this? This gets crazy.
The yes vote in particular with Prop 50. The reason voters said they voted yes on Prop 50, 82% of the case, 8 out of 10 voters say it was to counter the GOP changes, not because they saw it was the best way to draw those district lines. Now, if you go back and look at those who said no to the vote, they said their reasoning to do so is that they saw this as not the best way to draw those district lines, while only 34% said it was to stop the Democrats from adding seats in Congress. A couple other things we're taking away from what voters said there in California. We asked the voters and how they would actually like to see these lines drawn. The irony of this, Trace, is that 9 out of 10 voters, even more so, said they'd like to see this done by a nonpartisan commission, not the party in power. Well, that was preempted with the outcome of this vote.
That's right. 92% of both yes and no voters said congressional lines should be drawn by a nonpartisan commission. So the top two Democrats from California, voters said they shouldn't run for president. Everyone believes that crime is a problem. The economy sucks. The cost of living is crazy and unaffordable. People are barely hanging on. 59% of voters said they're holding steady, basically meaning surviving. But they still voted yes on Prop 50. I don't even know how to explain the cognitive dissonance and the lack of critical thinking. This is just tribalistic, brainwashed team sports politics. The propaganda in this state is so strong that people will vote against their best interests and their own principles just so their team can win, or just because they don't want to vote for the other side. Their hatred for Donald Trump, their worldview and ideology and ego is so strong that it overrides any type of self-interest, logic, and reality. If you think about it, the 4.8 million people that voted yes were the vote blue no matter who base. That's who it was. The No Kings protesters, the far leftists. That's who it was. You have a lot of people out there who are general election voters, who are low informed, lied to, manipulated. They believe the propaganda because of the corrupt news that they have here. They're too busy trying to pay their bills, live their life, watch sports, too into their tribalistic way of thinking. But I think some of them can be persuaded. I think if we just inform them, if we get out there and have our voices heard, we could make a difference. That's the silver lining. That's the positive. California Democrats and Newsom are going to parade this as some big, huge win and a voter mandate and a justification saying the voters' voices were heard. We left it up to the voters. They decided. But here's what's crazy. If you just do a little bit of research, a little bit of digging, in 2010, Prop 27 was the last time the Democrats tried to kill the Independent Redistricting Committee. 11 million people voted in that one, almost doubling this year's. And this is what's really frustrating about these politicians in Sacramento, how corrupt they are and how much they don't care about you. We mentioned 80% of people say crime is a problem. In 2024, Prop 36 was a referendum on all the crime going on in California, the retail theft, the carjackings, the violent crime, the people getting beat up on the street. Over 6 million people voted yes. And it passed with over 70%. That is a mandate. That's the will of the voters. That's the will of the people. But when it came to the budget this year, what did Newsom and the California Democrats do? They ignored it. They didn't want to fund it. They refused. They rather give $12 billion to illegal immigrants for health care. They rather give $10 billion for the high-speed rail to nowhere. This is the problem. This is the corruption. They know better than you. And the hypocrisy. The 6 million on Prop 36 nearly matched the entire voter turnout for this Proposition 50. And yet, they're choosing to ignore Prop 36 and then claim Prop 50 was this huge win and the will of the people. I know people are hoping that President Trump and the DOJ and the Supreme Court reverse Proposition 50. I don't know if that's going to happen. It might. I don't know.
Before voters went to the polls to cast their ballots, President Donald Trump was making claims this morning that California's special election was unfair and rigged, as well as unconstitutional.
Now, that's despite similar redistricting efforts by Republican-led states. Now, in his post, the president says, quote, the unconstitutional redistricting vote in California is a giant scam. You can see he used all caps there, in that the entire process, in particular voting itself, is rigged. Again, all caps there. All mail-in ballots where the Republicans in that state are shut out is under very serious legal and criminal review, and he ends that by saying stay tuned.
No one's coming to save us. The Republicans and the federal level ignore California. Trump is only in office for 4 years. Even if he wants to help or try to do something, no one's coming to save us. We need to stop putting all our faith in the federal government like our liberal Democrat friends do. The government is not coming to save you. A lot of us say we the people, but then wait for the president or the Republicans who control the House and the Senate to come and save us and change things. That is the antithesis of what we should believe in. Government is not here to help you. Politicians are not here to help you. President Trump is not going to help you. Congress isn't going to help you. The Supreme Court's not going to help you. We need to help ourselves. That's what we the people means. I'm a big Star Wars fan. One of my most successful videos had kind of a Star Wars theme. It was titled California's New Hope. And I made the comparison of voter ID to the torpedo that was going to destroy the Death Star. We're not quite there yet. I think we're right around here, somewhere between episode 3 and Andor. We need to come together. The liberal, corrupt media that covers for the Democrats and pushes propaganda to the masses here in California, the low information voter, the low IQ, low information voter, we need to be the counter to that. Our voice needs to be louder. Independent media is the way to go. We need to form a coalition. I'm a nobody. I'm just a guy with a gaming computer he no longer games with an old gaming mic. I don't know if I'm going to tag them or not. I don't even know if this is going to get to them, but we need to come together. Nicole Shanahan, RFK's former running mate, is a powerful voice. She has a lot of resources and connections to some big conservative names on the national stage. California Insider has been around for a while. They do amazing work. Siamak Karami does real deep dive investigations, and they're tied to the Epoch Times. California Underground has been around forever. I've been following him on Instagram for several years now, and also now on YouTube. Shiloh Marks does real great work on X, exposing the corrupt voter rolls here in California that our Secretary of State claims are up to date. State of Gold Podcasts is a brand new podcast that actually started right around when I did. He's charming, he's handsome, he has a lot of resources, great networking. He just recently interviewed Carl DeMaio. It's a great team up. I hope that bond and relationship grows and strengthens because we need that. And of course, Carl DeMaio. We all need to come together and form a coalition. We're probably not all going to agree on everything, but we do agree on one thing. California needs a change. And the Republican Party here in California is on life support. It's non-existent. That's what the 13 colonies were. They fought the most powerful military in the world at that time. Now, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the war, the Continental Army was getting pushed back and they were retreating until they were surrounded and stuck in the freezing ice cold snow. It was the militia, the small bands of militia that were attacking using guerrilla warfare, prolonging the war until the Continental Army and George Washington can gather and regroup until winter ends. That was the rebellion in Star Wars, until the rebellion became the rebellion. They were fragmented cells, different approaches, ideologies, and styles, but they were all fighting one common goal. They were all fighting the empire, the evil, corrupt empire. And believe me, it doesn't end with voter ID. Voter ID is the beginning. If you remember in A New Hope, they destroyed the Death Star. But the Empire came back, Empire Strikes Back, and there was also the Return of the Jedi, where there was a new Death Star built, right? So voter ID is the first step, and believe me, there's going to be some funny business when they're counting the signatures and maybe when the vote comes in 2026. And then if it does pass, they're probably not going to enforce it. They're going to find ways around it. Who knows? But it's not over yet. We need to stop sitting back and complaining and doing nothing. We need to come together, we need to form a coalition, and we need to fight. That's what we need to do. Remember, rebellions are built on hope.
We can't just give in.
We joined an alliance, not a suicide pact.
We've only now managed to gather our forces.
Gather our forces? General Draven's already blown up an Imperial base.
A decision needed to be made.
If it's war you want, you'll fight alone.
If that's how it's going, why have an alliance at all?
If she's telling the truth, we need to act now.
Councillors, please.
It is simple. The Empire has the means of mass destruction. The rebellion does not.
A Death Star? This is nonsense.
What reason would my father have to lie? What benefit would it bring him?
The Empire has this kind of power. What chance do we have?
What chance do we have? The question is, what choice? Run, hide, plead for mercy, scatter your forces. You give way to an enemy this evil with this much power, and you condemn the galaxy to an eternity of submission. The time to fight is now.
Yes.
Every moment you waste is another step closer to the ashes of Jeddah.
Asking us to invade an Imperial installation based on nothing but hope.
Rebellions are built on hope.
If you like this video, leave a like and possibly subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.